All right, hello everybody. Welcome to session 5 of today, the third day of our design festival with Mickey from Everything. You're in Newcastle, aren't you, Mickey?
Yeah, that's right.
So this is a new edition of our Nice Work series. I'm sure a few of you have probably seen this, what we do with this one before. We're asking studios of all different sizes to come on and share the behind the scenes of the project. As usual, if anybody's got any questions, please drop them into the chat and hopefully we can ask them at the end if there's any time. But as we've been finding out, the time has been evaporating very, very quickly. So we're nearly at the end of day 3, which is quite surprising. So like I say, please do drop it in. But until then, Mickey, I'll throw it over to you and then we'll take it, see what happens at the end.
All right, cool. Cheers, Chris. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you're enjoying your festival to now. So my name is Mickey Devine. I'm creative director and co-founder of Everything. I'm going to talk to you about the process behind a kind of a recently launched project. But first, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about who we are and what we do. So yeah, we are Everything. We are a brand and design agency based in Newcastle. And we set up in 2013 with the intention of trying to make a difference in the world, really. And what that kind of means is that we get to work with amazing people and amazing clients who share the same purpose as ourselves. And they predominantly work in arts and culture, in education, and not-for-profit organisations as well. So our studio's, bang in the centre of Newcastle. It's on High Bridge. It's a pretty cool street, full of independent businesses. There's cafes and bars. There's a couple of rough pubs and stuff as well there to sort of keep us humble. But it's just it's a fantastic place to work. And this is this is a studio space called High Bridge Works, which is unfortunately one of the very few remaining creative spaces in the centre of Newcastle. But it's such a cool place to work. It's sort of full of kind of small practices from artists to illustrators, interior designers, other graphic designers. How Bridge Works it's been a kind of a home for innovation since I think it was the 17th century now, where the rotary engine was invented there. There's been a series of art galleries, and there was a printers for about 100 years or so. And our actual studio was one of those rooms. So it was full of printing press. There's still ink caked on the floor, which we keep kicking up every day. But it's a really nice space. We're currently in the kind of halfway through the redevelopment of it all, so it'll look a lot cooler in time. And this is our super talented and amazing team. So we're only a small agency. You've got Joe on the left, Georgia, myself, and Mark. And Mark and I set up the agency almost 10 years ago, which is quite scary to say that out loud, to be honest. Mark's a writer, and when we set up, we didn't have any processes in place whatsoever. We didn't need them. Mark would find the work and I would design the work. And that seemed to work for us for a while. But when we started thinking about hiring and expanding the team, we started feeling like we needed to become a process-led agency. So we just made it up on the spot, and then we've been trying to sort of develop and improve that ever since, really. And a year and a half ago, we went down to a 4-day week. So we probably need to change our process yet again, because obviously that kind of brings in lots more kind of friction and less time to do the work. But yeah, it's we're getting there anyway. We're getting there. So the project I'm going to talk to you about today is Newcastle Creates. So in early 2021, I think it was March 2021. So if you remember, the world was in the middle of a global pandemic. We received an invitation to pitch to create a brand identity and a general look and feel for the Newcastle Cultural Compact, which it was called then. The budget was £5,000 and we had a 3-month deadline. So not a huge amount of money, but the project excited us. It was something quite high profile, for the region. We thought some of our peers might be competing, so we kind of like that competitive element as well. We want to sort of show off a little bit. But what is a cultural compact? So in 2020, the Arts Council they chose a series of locations across the country and gave them a small pot of money. I think it was around £10,000 or £20,000 to support the local cultural sector. And there's no agenda. They kind of handed over the money to each place, and they give them complete free rein and into how they wanted to shape and form their compact. So this didn't do so kind of researching all of these compacts here didn't really help us, because they're all completely different agendas, different goals. And the brief that we were kind of given was, well, quite vague, to be honest. They kind of assumed that everybody knew what a cultural compact was, and we didn't at the time at all. There was nothing really about kind of who was involved in the compact, or kind of plans about how they wanted the Newcastle one to look and shape and form. But there was this quite a rough vision which was included, and we thought it was quite interesting. It was really positive. It was almost like a rallying cry, really. And from this, we kind of got the impression that the compact is all about the creativity and imagination of the people. It was about Newcastle. It was about celebrating this city of makers. So we kind of thought that this sounded pretty cool, and it was a project that we certainly wanted to get involved in. We actually have a separate sort of process when it comes down to whether we should pitch or not, and it's a series of questions which I'm going to share with you. So there's 10 questions, and we give them kind of a scoring system against each one. And we sort of designed this to try and remove the human emotion from the decision, really. Your dream project might come up, and everybody wants to go for it, but you've got to kind of think, have we got a chance of winning this? So this has been sort of designed and sort of developed over the years, really, to kind of ensure that we only go for projects that we feel that we can win. If we score 7 or over, we go for it. If it's between 5 and 6, we can, and anything below that we try and avoid. We haven't always. We've sometimes chased a pipe dream, only scoring 1 point and come nowhere. But when we have actually stuck with this, we've won something like 70% of the pitches, and when we haven't, I don't think we've won a single one. So maybe it's something for you to consider. I mean, screenshot this, trial it next time you're asked to do a project. Pitching, especially free pitching, can be quite a dirty world. You don't know who's involved, you don't know what the expectations are. They might have someone in mind already. So I think anything that can kind of like streamline and improve your chance of winning, should be considered, really. So normally when we pitch, we only ever show one idea, and we treat it as if it's a paid project. We throw absolutely everything at it. But because the brief was a little vague, and we weren't quite sure about the goals of the project, we felt that we had to be quite broad with our approach as well. So we actually included 3 different concepts. We also thought that the name was quite weak, it didn't really mean anything. So we also included 3 kind of different name options as well. So the first option was all about sort of diversity. Newcastle's made up of the people from all over the world, from different backgrounds, different cultures. And we created this really simple identity using, kind of very familiar shapes. And the idea was that, all of these shapes represent different people, and they all form to make the culture in Newcastle. We wanted this to sort of appeal to young people, to children, and to older people as well. And we just want to kind of celebrate, the culture. We want to make it really vibrant, really bright, really colourful. We kind of started illustrating key landmarks so that we could start celebrating the boroughs that kind of make up Newcastle as well. And we just want to keep, really friendly and loose. The second option was called Newcastle Together, and this was a little bit more reserved, really, in the design and stripped back. It was all about collaboration and people, kind of working together, creating together, making together. And, we used lots of photography that was always, people kind of, just together having fun, whether that's on a walk in a cultural surrounding. We want to kind of, give the sense of how the compact can sort of, bring everyone together in Newcastle, whether it's an organisation, a cultural person, someone who's no idea what culture even means. So, we wanted to keep it quite loose. And the third option was we went down this idea of kind of introducing a bit of a bolder name, where we used the new from Newcastle as a bit of a prefix, and then language and terminology can sort of hang from this. We thought having a bit of a teaser campaign, new things are coming. It's a new identity for Newcastle, it's new equality, new diversity, and so on. And we want it just to be a celebration and make it really bold, really vivid, using quite a cool typeface. And I mean, I guess it looks a little bit more like a festival in some ways. But the three ideas, we thought that we had quite a good mix, and we only had 2 days as well to do this, so not long at all. And we won, which we were absolutely ecstatic about. The opportunity to work on something so high profile in the area that you work was absolutely amazing. And I guess the hard work started from now. So this is what we call our process. It's everything happens for a reason. As a small agency, when we set up our process, we felt that it needed to be flexible and it needed to work for any type of project and any sort of situation. And that's what this does, well, for us anyway. There's always four phases. The first phase is discovery, which is the kind of the research. It's just getting to know about the client. And, anything can happen in this phase. It could be site visits, it could be a series of meetings, it could be workshops, focus groups, interviewing staff, interviewing customers. It could be competitor analysis, kind of, anything that we think is going to help us sort of get on the skin of the organization really, and find find what makes them unique and their purpose. The second phase is invention, which is the most kind of creative part of our process. It's the coming up with concepts. Phase 3, we kind of develop the chosen route, and then we start creating all of the priority outputs that are required. And the fourth phase is the delivery. It's the handover to the client, whether that's kind of brand guidelines, it could be website training and deployment. And then we always evaluate the project as well at the end. So in terms of the compact, this was the kind of the process that we mapped out. We always start any project with a meeting, and this is for us to find out as much as we possibly can, where we ask a lot of questions, we listen, and then we put all our findings into something what we call an action plan, which ultimately becomes the brief. And it's, we constantly refer back to this throughout the duration of the project. And what we found out is that the compact was going to be made up of 20 individuals from various different sectors. Some of them kind of directors of galleries, of museums. There was someone there from the kind of the freelance community. We had people from education, healthcare, the council. So a real vast, broad mix of people and skill sets. We also found out that the compact had spent around 12 months gathering research and surveys from, asking people of Newcastle what they want out of the compact and culture. And they very kindly, agreed to provide us with all this research. But we had no idea that it was going to be something like 50,000 words of testimonials and charts and word clouds and God knows whatever else. But it was important for us to kind of read through all of that just to kind of get a better sense of who the audience actually is. We were a little bit sort of bamboozled. We'd taken on board so much information at this point. And we still didn't think that the compact actually had an agenda, really knew what they wanted to do. So we suggested kind of a discovery session, which is a very short sort of workshop. And in this session, we asked these 4 questions, which was, what do you do? How do you do it? Who do you do it for? And how does it help them? And it's quite surprising how difficult it is for people to answer these questions. Now, we had probably 6 or 7 people, 8 people on the call, and it seemed that every time somebody suggested something, it kind of caused a bit of a debate, which was quite a challenging process to sort of manage and handle. But as they kept talking and arguing and disagreeing and then agreeing and then falling out again, key themes kept sort of popping up for us. And these were kind of, how everybody is going to be included, how it's about, celebrating the creativity of the city, and not just the city centre, but, all of the boroughs, the areas, how it's about inclusivity, how it's about the well-being. Creativity can help boost people's mood. It's about providing opportunities for people, individuals, for companies, and other kind of organizations. And we kind of, after the rest of the research, we sort of pulled out these sort of 6 themes. And we went back to the compact and we suggested that they write a manifesto. It's something that they could all agree on, and it would, something that's going to push the project forward. And they agreed to do so. Sorry. So we went away and they wrote a short narrative about each area. And this was a real defining point for us. These 6 themes became the key ambitions of the project. And from this we got some absolutely wonderful kind of terminology and language. How Newcastle would be the leading city for tackling equality. The sense of belonging. It's the best place to develop creative skills. Shaping senses of identity and so on. And we felt now that we had kind of a stronger idea about who the compact was and the ambitions going forward. But kind of internally, that wasn't sort of enough for us. We kind of thought, well, the compact's about including absolutely everyone in Newcastle in culture. And how can you appeal to everyone? Everyone has a completely different interpretation of what culture is. Some people might not know or understand what it is. It could be a walk in a park. It could be a community group, crafts on the, crafts at home. It could be an art installation, a night out, sporting event, absolutely anything. How can we create something that attracts and appeals to all of these people from all walks of life? Place meant the whole of Newcastle, not just the city centre, but the local communities that make up the city. How can we appeal to people from Byker or Walker, as well as places like Heaton and Jesmond? And we felt that a sense of pride was the answer. So people from Newcastle are some of the proudest that I've ever met. I'm not from Newcastle, I'm from Durham, so not too far away. But the kind of personality of the people are so different. They absolutely love the city, everything about it. They love the bridges, they love the tune, the football club, the big market, the history, the heritage, the accent. It all adds to their very proud identity. And this was something that we spoke about a lot throughout the duration of the project. So the compact members kind of were in agreement with us that the name needed to improve. It didn't feel very inclusive. I think if you didn't have any idea of what culture was, then it doesn't mean anything to you. And we wanted to have something that was a little bit more standalone and something that everyone could get behind. Now, naming is quite a difficult thing to do, I think. It's quite challenging. We always ask the team just to generate a list of words, of names, of possibilities, and we had hundreds and hundreds, majority of them pretty bad, to be honest. And then we sort of whittle them all down until we get into kind of our preferred shortlist. So we kind of, we still like new culture from the pitch. Newcastle, the city of makers, was in their vision. We thought that sounded quite cool, but is it a name? Is it more, should it be a strapline, or is it more of a campaign? Newcastle culture, again, came from the pitch, but it was a bit safe. Creative Newcastle was a little bit more interesting, but we felt that we had quite a nice mix to consider. But before we went to the client and presented these names, we did a little bit more research. So we looked into possible conflicts, if there's any similar organizations or groups. We looked into available URLs, and then we also started thinking about what the messaging could be. So before we've even thought about how something might look, we always think about how we can actually communicate, how we're going to speak to the right people. And the two that were chosen were New Culture and Creative Newcastle. So then that allowed us to move on to the next phase. So we felt that we had a very good understanding of who the compact was, what they wanted to achieve. We knew that everybody had to be included, and yeah, how do you include everyone in an identity? But that's the challenge that we had. Every project we kind of start a bit like this. ideas are just sort of thrown on the wall, albeit this was working from home, you know, in lockdown. And you know, we're not too precious about how things look, or we don't really use much colour at this phase. It's all just about sort of emptying our minds with anything that could be in there, and then chatting about things, dismissing things. You know, we were even sort of looking at some of the other names that we picked out that were sort of dismissed. You know, we didn't want to give anything up at this point in time. And then we kind of whittled this down into 2 ideas, which we then presented to the client. And the first concept, we looked towards the past of the city's heritage. You know, we wanted to embrace Newcastle's creative spirit. Now, Newcastle was a major player in the Industrial Revolution, you know, from coal and shipyards and engineering, shipbuilding, steam trains, and so on. And, you know, there's always been a lot of innovation associated with Newcastle, you know, more recently kind of the booming tech industry. And even today, you know, the city itself is, you know, full of beautiful architecture, full of history, and there's so much redevelopment work going on at the moment. I'm sure it's going to look like a completely different city in, you know, in another 4 or 5 years' time. And we want to sort of, you know, tap into the past, but kind of modernize the past into for today. And we came up with this. So we changed the name to Newcastle Creates. We felt that it was more open and it gave more possibilities about how we could sort of develop the brand going forward. And the typeface that we came up with, kind of, you know, these little rivets replacing ink traps, kind of have, you know, associated with the rivets from the Tyne Bridge and other kind of industrial landmarks throughout the city. And then when we started introducing the quite bold colour schemes, you know, it became something really bold and really, really fresh. Again, we had this secondary tier of messaging, you know, Newcastle creates culture, creates opportunities. And we started playing around with the idea of, you know, how the compact is made for Newcastle and how that can develop, you know, made with pride, made with ambition, made by. And we felt like, you know, we had a few lovely tiers of messaging here to develop going forward. I guess the beauty of the typography that we created is that it's so distinctive that you don't really have to do much else with it. Once you start including people, you know, it becomes quite inclusive, it becomes quite fun. There's a lovely energy about it, it's very trustworthy. And we kind of felt that this was a true representation of Newcastle as a city. The second idea, we kind of had this idea, you know, we kept on thinking about creating sort of a badge that people could feel proud of, you know, an ident that becomes, you know, the signature of the whole of Newcastle. And we started off with this N, and we kind of felt, well, you know, if we remove the two strokes, the 2 sides, the 2 pillars, as we call them, that would leave this diagonal shape, which is the bridge. And we want to use this bridge to connect people with culture. And the bridge would always remain the kind of the focal point of the whole brand. And then we want to inject a level of creativity into it, where we can just keep on replacing the pillars with shapes, with patterns. It could be illustrations, it could be kind of crayons. You know, you don't have to be a professional to create a logo. You know, a child could kind of create their own logos. And we like this idea of how everyone could get involved with the compact. So the name was New Culture, and we had the idea that the logo type would always be separate from the actual ident, and just allow these, you know, beautiful patterns and shapes and an emotive kind of emotive identifier, just to be the main sort of brand styling. But to give a really sort of, you know, lots of energy. It's fun, it's very inclusive, and we kind of like the idea of how it could develop as well in the future. As Newcastle changes. So the feedback was that it was mostly well received, but you can imagine with, you know, 20 people involved in the compact, there was a lot of discussion and debate, and it looked something like this: people agreeing, people disagreeing, and this was again all on a call, and it was just, you know, kind of wanting to bang your head against the wall a little bit at times. And we had to sort of try and decipher exactly what all of this sort of meant. And what it meant when condensed down was this. You know, brilliant job, some beautiful work. I'd like to see a blend of both routes, which always seems to happen to us for some reason. You know, the element with the bridge I love, but the different idents needs some more purpose, which is, you know, fair enough. And Newcastle Creates was the preferred name. Like the ident, but kind of look like more of a logo. So, you know, kind of ripped to shreds a little bit, but it kind of got the sense of what we meant. You know, the Newcastle Creates was the preferred name, but the styling of new culture was, again, was preferred. And, you know, they kind of wanted the identity to be kind of a more of a traditional logo lookup. And that's what we tried to do. So we kind of went back to the beginning, and we played around with, you know, how can we make this ident become a more sort of interesting logo? And we felt like, you know, the strokes are too thin. It's not very robust. So, and once we started to detach the pillars from the bridge, it looks quite ugly. And then we tried to develop and we refined it and we made it fatter and chunkier until we got here. And now the pillars are kind of 50% in height. We felt that, you know, it's almost perfectly square, you know, it's a nice, robust, interesting shape. And we felt with this, we could then introduce some very kind of friendly, curved, beautiful typography. And, you know, the curves and little flicks can be thought kind of, you know, offset the boldness of the actual brand mark and gave the logo a lot of balance. We felt that this needed to be sort of a primary identity for Newcastle Creates. And, you know, we want to kind of test it, you know, does it work with the city? Does it work with the galleries and the other kind of things on offer? And, you know, we think it does. You know, we're really happy with how it looks. And we also came up with this sort of tagline, really, which is culture is for everyone. It's really simple. Everyone can kind of understand it and everybody can feel welcome. So then again, we started testing, you know, how is that going to work? You know, does it feel like Newcastle? Does it feel right? Yes, it does. And, you know, this idea of, you know, having this ident as the badge, you know, which people can wear with pride, you know, with honor. We've kind of felt like, you know, the energy was right, and we could kind of start thinking about, you know, the look and feel. But we still wanted to include the other idents that we created before. You know, we still like this injection of energy, of creativity, of diversity. So we kind of created six alternative logos, which are kind of very abstract interpretations of the key ambitions, which we highlighted earlier. And, you know, you can use them whenever you want. You can use them, you know, big, small, you can, you know, have fun with them. It's all about kind of, you know, like showing your own creativity really across the project. Color. Again, you know, we needed something that we felt familiar for everyone. So in the initial discovery phase, we listened into, well, we were kindly invited to listen to a presentation by an agency in Manchester called Ultimate Creatives, who'd been kind of commissioned to do a study on Newcastle about the architecture, about the signage, about, you know, a bit of placemaking, I guess. And they kind of had, you know, they took all these beautiful shots, which was sort of stolen for the purpose of today only. And we kind of thought, well, you know, can we use some of these pigments, some of these colors, and create a kind of a really cool color palette from that. And that's what we did, but quite loosely. And then when you see them combined, you know, there's a nice mix of vibrancy. There's a mix of kind of more traditional tones. There's lots of colors that can, you know, be high contrast. You can be quite bold with the application. And we thought, you know, there's a really nice mix there for the look and feel of Newcastle Creates going forward. And then, you know, we can have some fun with, you know, how the idents actually look within this lovely color palettes. We can create new ones. You know, we'd love the idea that, you know, there's hundreds eventually created by everyone from, you know, kids to community groups to other designers, other professionals, illustrators. We just like this kind of, you know, this inclusive theme where, you know, the bridge is always the one thing that's bringing people together to culture. And from then on, you know, the ident becomes the focal point of the brand. It's so colorful, it's so vibrant, it's so exciting, it's so kind of open and honest. And interesting to look at, that we just kind of pushed that as far as we could, really. As you know, bearing in mind, you know, the compact will be kind of, you know, using their own materials and having to kind of be responsible for that going forward. So we needed the identity to be pretty simple to use, but without losing any sort of integrity as well. You know, you can blow up the shapes to make these more interesting patterns as well. You know, there's kind of no, you know, you just want to push the brand as much as possible, really, while always considering that, you know, culture is for everyone. People. Now, of course, people are a fundamental part of Newcastle Creates. You know, it's the people that bring the creativity. It's the people that bring the culture. How can we involve people in with the new brand styling? And we did that by kind of playing around with having a series of people from, you know, musicians to dancers to, you know, riding a bicycle, where they become a part of the logo. You know, they jump out of the bridge. You know, they're really bold, they're happy, and it kind of gives a sense of place and a sense of purpose. And you know, they're all just very, very beautiful to sort of look at. And we had the idea of that eventually, you know, these could all be kind of animations, you know, maybe it's used on social media. It could be actual footage of people, you know, doing cultural things, enjoying themselves, you know, kind of expressing themselves, or interviews. And it just give, you know, a kind of enhance the energy of the brand going forward. We also looked at the secondary tier of messaging, which was liked from the previous route in the presentation. You know, made with pride, you know, made with craft, made with theatre. It was, you know, bringing people to the centre of the brand. And we keep pushing for this. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but we like the idea of each community having their own, or a series of their own kind of logos, which are made from people who actually live there. So whether you're a child in Benwell, or, you know, kind of a designer in Heaton or whatever, that, you know, on every single lamppost throughout the whole city of each borough, that you just have a series of these different ends, just kind of showing off the creativity that Newcastle has, you know, which we thought would be, you know, super, super cool. And we kind of ended phase 4 with the brand toolkit. So, you know, nothing's really happened. You know, the compact only really launched the end of last year, and they need to take our brand styling forward. So we created a very simple brand handbook, which, you know, has all of the usual things in which you'd expect. You know, vision and values. It has some rules and regulations around logo. It talks about the concepts, you know, colorways, things you can do, things you can't do, placements. You know, you've got the variations, you know, color palette, typography, and so on. You know, all the things that you guess. But it's important to have this in place so that you know, whoever kind of, you know, works with the compact in the future, whether it's them internally or whether it's other agencies, that they kind of have, you know, the fundamental calls and rules of how to take the brand forward. I'm just going to show a quick video. So just before I kind of go, just a quick summary, really. So Newcastle Creates launched in December. So the 3-month deadline took a little bit longer. It actually took us 5 months to create the brand identity, and then we did the website as well. That's a whole different story. But we've had to wait until sort of recently until we've actually announced this project. So it hasn't really felt that recent to us, but it's certainly been fun kind of looking back at all the process and the stages that we went through. So I guess a couple of years on from actually creating the brand, you know, we are immensely
proud that we've produced this work. You know, we're very excited to see how the compact's going to grow and develop in the future, and, you know, make sure that culture's there for everybody. Thank you.
Mickey, that was brilliant. Really appreciate that. It's so good to see. I think from my perspective, I've seen a lot of regions look to do these sorts of projects, these looks at culture. And as somebody that's lived in Coventry all my life, we've recently had City of Culture, and there's been a bit of a fallout, a negative fallout from that, because it's not been done with people locally in mind. So to see, and from your perspective, and hopefully other people in the area, to see people that were commissioned, that were from the area, that feel a bit of a sense of purpose and a belonging to that area. It must have been really nice to work on something that you were close to, because, like I say, I know the identity that was created for us in Coventry was done in London. And I think that tends to be a bit of a sort of a tradition that a lot of people do. They look towards the bright lights of the big cities and sort of tend to commission those outside of the city. But that having that local link must have been really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose the disappointing thing was that the project started in lockdown. So, we probably would have had a different process, I think, because everything was, Zoom calls. We sat in on board meetings for the council. It was quite exhausting. I'm sure everybody felt it, the sort of Zoom burnout when you would sit there all day, every day, just sort of listening to people talk. So I think, we would have probably had more sort of more reaction with people, with people actually from Newcastle. But yeah, I mean, I'm just like I said, I'm excited to see how it's going to develop in the future. Next year there's going to be kind of a big festival on, which hopefully will be, a massive success. And I also hope that, there is a place for us as well to continue the relationship with Newcastle Creates and kind of continue to develop. But if we don't, I won't be too upset, because I don't think it's about us. I think it's about the whole of Newcastle kind of coming together to celebrate culture and, and being proud of what we do.
100%. Really like in a sort of sadistic way, like the feedback wall, and seeing it like that. But it's just, I spotted a comment about Amsterdam at the bottom, which made me laugh about, it's, we don't want it to be the same, but I felt like I felt like some connection towards that along those lines. As somebody that's running a smallish studio with people of different ages involved in the team, how do you safeguard from that becoming a quite a mental annihilation at times? It can feel, can't it, when can't take it too personally, but sometimes we put so much into these things and it's difficult not to take it personally.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, we all love what we do, don't we? That's why we do it. I think you just have to kind of laugh it off at times. You can't, my sort of, personally, my initial reaction is to get really, really angry sometimes in the meetings, which doesn't always work. A bit sort of Don Draper-esque, I suppose, or wishing I was like Don Draper. But, we just try and sort of protect the team, really. And I guess if anybody's so close to something, it means a lot. So we try to see it from the perspective of a client as well. We've actually got a handbook in here, which kind of has all the different types of people that we work with, and it's trying to kind of build a brand persona about them, really, about the busy people. They're going to be cross. You might have people working underneath them, and that's to try and to get ourselves and the team to just kind of remember and try and get in the psyche of the people that we work with, so that if they do get a little bit upset or disagree, that they don't take it too much to heart. But I've got full faith in our team. They are super creative, they are super talented, and I'm very fortunate to work with them.
I suppose if you didn't care and people didn't get sort of slightly upset to begin with, then there's probably something wrong, isn't there? You'd have to question even more. Through that early phase, when you had a couple of days just to send those options that you sent, and they went through the completely different sort of spectrums, weren't they? Had the colourful one, the shapes, and so on and so forth, the more stark cultural one. When you won the bid, did they say, were there reasons why? Because you then changed it quite dramatically in the process following that. Was there a reason that did they give you any feedback on why that was won? Because I've heard that quite a lot, and it's sometimes we miss the bit where there was maybe a single reason, or there was something somewhere within it that they liked, but it just wasn't on track at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what everybody else submitted, to be honest, but I think it was the name change really was a key sort of fact, and I guess giving them options as well. They kind of like that. But I mean, we always go in with one idea. I think it looks a little bit weak if you kind of go in with, you know, two or three or four or five ideas. I mean, I've worked at agencies before when you've showed a ridiculous amount of concepts at the first stage. And I think that's 100% wrong, because every idea just becomes watered down. But because we didn't know much about them, and because they didn't really know much about, you know, how it was going to sort of develop and evolve, we just felt that we had to sort of try and cover all bases, really. So that's why it was super colourful. That's why we looked at messaging. That's why it was kind of more stripped back and reserved. And I think that's what, you know, that's what they kind of said. They appreciated the kind of the level and the amount of work that we put into it, which I think was ultimately the reason why we were chosen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that, isn't there? The idea that you can go in to push the boundary a bit to sort of say, actually, we don't think this is right. You know, we maybe need to look at a change. I think there is a lot of respect in that, even if it's not maybe broadcast. There's a lot of respect in that idea, and it's better to sort of do something that you believe in as opposed to maybe just soaking it up or sucking it up and doing what they want because, you know, you think it's an easy life.
I mean, I think like a lot, well, we actually said as well, you know, the work that we showed in the pitch environment, you know, we didn't think it would be right because we didn't know anything about them, and you know, otherwise you'd just be designing something to look pretty, you know, with no sort of purpose or reason behind it all. And I think it's quite common as well when we do pitch that you know, whatever you win the pitch with, it doesn't end up being the final work. So you could sort of say that, you know, is there a way of winning pitches, and then just to kind of, you know, then you know, make sure you get the project and then go from there. But yeah, I mean, you know, super pleased that we did end up winning it, obviously.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm conscious again of time, but that piece at the end about the different areas of Newcastle also having that their input on how you say, trying to sort of push them towards maybe, you know, embracing that and actually putting that into practice. But that idea of the whole idea of what culture is, it means so many different things to so many different people, isn't it?
Yeah.
The idea that of getting people involved, you know, the actual people that live and breathe it, that are part of the fabric. I think that is so important to give people ownership of these things, because then that really does unite communities, and it does show off diversity, and you're not just saying these things, or not you as a business, the client with their remit. You know, sometimes culture can get lost in highbrow or art or, you know, theatre and dance, and to the majority of people, it's just where they live, what they do on a daily basis, the language that they talk, you know, the people that they know, isn't it? So trying to encourage people to be involved in that process is really important.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, hopefully, you know, you do end up going with the sort of the flag idea. I mean, you know, when we kind of thought about, you know, people plus place equals pride, it was, you know, I mean, it's an impossible task, isn't it, to produce anything that everybody loves? You know, it's never going to happen, really. So we kind of felt that we needed to have something where everybody can feel that they belong, really, you know, where they can actually get involved. And I think if your daughter was to create a logo that ended up in a banner, that would make their kind of parents much more proud, you know, so proud of them that they're a part of it all. And that's what we tried to sort of do with the, you know, with a flexible kind of approach to that idea, really.
Yeah, amazing. That's perfectly brought us bang on time. And Chloe's just put a lovely message about thank you for being so honest and interesting about the process. We don't always get to. I was saying that to you just before we let everybody in. We don't always get to see this over the case studies and the, you know, the final the final project. We see the beautifully rounded look that people put out there to sort of give us an idea, but we can never really encapsulate that in one go. So to see it or to hear somebody speak through it has always been fascinating and always been a great addition to what How&How stands for and what I'm trying to achieve. So I really appreciate your time, Mickey. I know it's just another task on top of a mountain of tasks, but it's really appreciated and a great addition to the festival. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being involved. Cheers.
Well, I'll leave you all be. I hope everybody enjoyed that. If anybody would like a recording to watch back at their own time, just email me at hello@rightalignevents.co.uk and I'll get one sent out. But until next time, Mickey, I'll speak to you very soon. Take care.
Nice one. Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you.